I want to introduce you all to Jessica Dimson. So when we decided that we were going to turn 1619 into a visual book, of course, nothing is more important to a visual book than photography. And Jessica, though she already has a full-time job working on, the magazine, agreed to spend countless hours really helping us come up with the photography to illustrate the book. I want to briefly. So photography, of course, is always important, but it was particularly been important for Black Americans. Photography gets invented right before slavery ends, and it becomes this very powerful tool for abolitionists because they were taking photos of enslaved people, and somewhat ironically, some of the images that really put fire into the abolitionist movement were images of children who looked white, but were actually Black and enslaved. And it was photos of what looked like white children in slavery that converted many more Americans, white Americans, to the cause of abolition. And so photography was an important medium, and Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist who had escaped from slavery, at that time was the most photographed man of his century. And he wrote, actually, several essays and gave speeches about the power of photography because he saw it as a tool both for abolition, but also to allow Black Americans to shape their own image. And one of the things that he said was that photography made visible society's defects by revealing what ought to be through its reflection of what is. And so I feel, to kind of set the stage, that as we were kind of going through the process of trying to select the photos and thinking, there's so much horror in this book, there's so much brutality of what Black people had to go through, we wanted to balance that out and give the full breadth of the Black experience. So I'd love for you to start, Jessica, just by talking about kind of how you approached photography and your curation process.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Nicole. It's always fun to be on stage with you. So Nicole and I worked really closely on the curation of the book, and there are these 7 essays that are in the book that were reprinted. And we started with just, at the very basic level, like, you want to visualize what's in these essays. That alone is very powerful. Photography and the documents that we have in the book bear a different kind of witness than in some ways that the words do. They bring it to life. They're a different kind of testimony. But we looked at thousands and thousands of images. Nicole, you looked at almost every single one of them. I would sort of do a pass, and you would look at another pass. But it's just as you said, it was wanting to show the range of experience, not just pain, but also joy and love, and music, celebration, the arts. It was a chance for us to do a real sort of like 360 view of the Black experience through images. And the art does as well. So the photography, which was like thrilling for me, was just like, there was so much material there. And the hard part was honestly, cutting images was the hardest thing. In the end, we had 130 photographs make it into this book. And there are some that are on double page spreads, are really big, that you just get to like feel like you're in. And it was really fun to do it with you. And very hard. I mean, we looked at a lot of very difficult imagery and had to make some decisions.
Whoever's doing the slideshow, if we could go back to the first.
Yes.
You're showing this
is the families.
Opening slides. This is the family album. We wanted to see the first slides that we sent.
The first carousel.
Right. Yep.
This
is it.
Perfect.
So one of the things, and there's a lot of sadness in a lot of the images, but one of the things that we enjoyed quite a bit was we discussed pretty early on that we were going to put a lot of photos of us fighting back.
Yeah. Yes.
In here. So can you talk
Yes.
about that? And so you'll see there are a lot of
Yeah.
resistance photos.
Yeah.
And you don't often see those in this book, and that was really important for us. So
That was, and it runs throughout the book. There are a few here, but every time, again, we looked at thousands of photographs, and every time we landed on one, whereas Nicole says, we're fighting back, we were like, that has to go in. This is an opportunity, again, this is about understanding our history, and this kind of imagery is necessary to do that. And we played it has a big place in the book. Some of the images are well known, but others are lesser known, and each photograph has a caption with it. And so, one thing that we thought about in the book was, you might sit and read the book, but some people just are going to look at the photographs, and that's a way to experience this book, not just, that was an early pick, yeah. So, if you are just flipping through it, you can have a very, kind of rich experience just looking at the photographs, and we wanted that too.
okay, now we can go to the other.
Yeah, the family gallery. Yep, great.
Okay, so there's basically two portrait galleries in the book, and one is called Testament.
Yes.
And Testament is a gallery of family portraiture because, again, we thought when you think about the shaping of the image of Black people in the American mind, it's of broken homes. It's not of all the ways that we made family. And so we decided to do an album of family. And pretty early on, you had a novel idea that I wasn't convinced you would be able to pull off about the family portraiture album. So can you talk about that and then tell
Sure.
us the story of a few of these photos?
Yes. So the family's, I'll call Testament, but the family's portfolio, I had presented to Nicole. I said, I have studied photography for many years. I work in photography. I think we should try to only include Black photographers in this portfolio, going all the way back to the late 19th century. And I was unsure, but I was like, this is a good challenge, right? And as I dug further into it, became very clear that there were so many Black photographers whose work had gone unknown for years and years and years. And just scratching the surface is what this book does. And we can assert that Black photographers have been participating in and perfecting the medium of photography since its invention, particularly in portraiture. And that's what became apparent in researching this portfolio. So many names and so many photographers whose work either disappeared, are hidden in archives that are, not in major collections. This was a chance, and when I showed it to Nicole, what we had, this was an opportunity to give that work a permanent place and to have their names out there. So that became a really powerful and frankly humbling education for me to be able to learn about these photographers.
I think when you look at the book, Jessica made sure that there's information about the Black photographers and the photo studios. And portraiture was so important for Black Americans coming out of slavery. They had been degraded, they had been treated, and photographed, and there had been these cartoons and caricatures of Black life. And so being able to shape their image in the dress that they wore and the creation of family was so important. And so can you talk, before we go to the last album, especially about why it mattered who was behind the lens if people were to want to take control of their image?
Yeah, that was part of the impetus of wanting to have this gallery be only with Black photographers, because the shaping of our image is so important, not only in art and photography, but through history. And so part of wanting to do that was to assert that when it's through the eyes of a Black photographer, I mean, it was just clear when we started to put this together, like this was a different kind of testament, that this was really could track the history of Black families. Our earliest pictures from the late, I think we have a photo from 1865, all the way to 2024, you know, and it was so important to see how the image has been shaped, particularly of Black families. One note I want to say about, in terms of uncovering, or not uncovering, I shouldn't say I didn't discover these people, like they are hiding in plain sight. They just are not given the exhibitions, and they're not in the history books, and they're not in the courses that I was taught in college, like they just aren't. But one photographer who I was just amazed by is Richard Twine, who was a portrait photographer in St. Augustine, Florida, was born in the late 1800s, had a portrait studio in Lincolnville, which was set up by Freedmen after the Civil War. And his glass negatives were only discovered in the 1980s when there was a fire at the location where he worked. And no one had, you know, there was no history or record of his work until these glass negatives were found, and the St. Augustine Historical Society had them there. But just to think that there's just, it's so easy to just not even know about this. And so that's where it was really special for us to be able to put this kind of work. And there's a lot of stories like that in this book, a lot of photographers whose work really wasn't known until the last like 40, 50 years, who have been working over the last century and a half.
Yeah, that was just so powerful. And it just speaks to your brilliant mind.
Well.
Truly, it was so pleasurable to work with you, and I just learned so much. So we're gonna, in the last few minutes, we're gonna go to the final album, which is called Patriotism. And if you read my opening essay on democracy, if you know me at all, then you know I've long been fascinated by the dichotomy of Black Americans and the American flag, and how we use the American flag to try to claim citizenship in a country that has often rejected that. So I knew I wanted an album showing Black people with the American flag. I often talk about the image of Katrina that I've never been able to get out of my head, or that Black family standing on the roof and wrapping themselves in the American flag, hoping if they did so, maybe someone would see their humanity and come rescue them. So I would love for you just to talk to us about, and we kind of struggled with how would we present that? Would they be military photos? What types of photos would they be? So talk about your curation process for this. And there's so many of my favorite images in this one.
Well, this was a challenge because you felt very strongly about this being a portfolio. And again, I wanted to keep with the same as Testament, only Black photographers. Again, going back into the shaping of one's image, I mean, all of that is so important. And so I think my hesitation at first was that just visually I wasn't sure what we were going to get. But it was a fun challenge because you are brilliant. And I was like, okay, I could do this. Let's just dig a little deeper. And so what I ended up finding and what we ended up curating together was different interpretations, different moments, different settings, not just protest, but mourning and joy and pride. And it became, I mean, it's one of my favorite galleries because it was just like this fun visual challenge. This picture, this one is my favorite, and this is by a photographer named Early Hudnall Jr., who is still alive, and he lives in Houston. He was a Marine in the Vietnam War, and in the photographed just sort of everyday life in Houston. And this was from the early 90s. And just fun fact, Barry Jenkins' Moonlight was inspired by a lot of his photographs. He looked at those as inspiration. I like to keep it fresh. But just the thought that this man had gone to war, fought for this country, and is going out to a parade and seeing, what is like a really complicated scene, but one that is actually really hopeful and has joy, and it's a father and daughter together. I just love this photograph, and so I'm grateful that you wanted to do this portfolio, because unearthing, again, photographers that I wasn't even familiar with, but just also seeing how patriotism filters in, even in subtle ways, into photographs was really the fun part for me.
Well, just before you exit the stage again, like once you see a finished project, it just seems like obvious, but literally thousands and thousands of photos that Jessica went through and digging through different archives, and there's not like one place that you can go to find all these photos. It was a tremendous amount of work, but the book is as powerful as it is because of the work that you did. So I'm
thank
so very
you.
grateful, and thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
And this is the end of the main stage talks, but now we get to have a little fun. So if you stick in this room, Step Africa is going to join us on stage. And then at 10 o'clock, we're going to head upstairs. No, we're going to head out here for live go-go music and some snacks and some drinks, okay? All right, thank y'all.